are talking In the Trap, which on the surface may appear to be a standard possession movie, and in some ways it is, although it tries to kind of mix up the genre with a psychological twist on it as well. Now, this movie focuses on this character called Philip, who we first see as a young boy, where he is witness to what we see as a paranormal event. There seems to be some type of entity in this house where they're living with his mother and sister, and it seems to have taken the life of his sister. Cut to him as an adult, and he is a very nervous young man, a skittish sort of type character, very introverted, and he meets this kind of girl, and it all seems fantastic. However, she seems to be possessed by this kind of entity that is inhabiting this this house where he used to live. And things go from bad to worse from there. Now, is this really a kind of some type of demonic entity, or is this just the mental strain of a very kind of religious background and trauma that he's experienced, and just, you know, just the kind of the projections of a broken mind? He's helped by this kind of local priest. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's talk about, first of all, what I think works in this movie. This movie is certainly very twisty. You can't say that this movie doesn't have lots of kind of twists and turns in it. It's both a positive and a negative, which we'll come on to, but it will certainly play with your expectations, maybe about what you think is going on. I've tried to be quite broad in my kind of description of this movie to avoid any spoilers. There are some good horror sequences within this movie where I think some of the kind of the effect in regards to spooky imagery, horror iconography, things like that is pretty strong. And, you know, we see kind of lots of things that we've seen before in kind of demonic possession films, but I think the kind of the effects and the sequences that involve kind of paranormal stuff are done to a good standard. I think it does look otherworldly. It does kind of like look like this perversion of fate and things like that. The other thing I would say is I was quite intrigued by the portrayal of our main character. Now, I feel some people may write this off as bad acting, and there may be a touch of wooden acting here, I won't lie, but I've got to say, I thought the character of Philip was very unlike a lot of kind of protagonists that we've seen before. So the actor's name is Christofersen, and he plays this guy as a very timid sort of character. He seems to have been beaten down by life, certainly not a leading man material that you kind of see, very kind of like, I wouldn't say boo to a goose if that makes sense. And the way the character is written and the portrayal of this character is, as I say, it's something a little different, and I find it quite intriguing, because you really do feel like the weight of this world is on this guy's shoulders, and he is going to crack at any moment. And I thought it was quite an interesting performance. That even though I think some of the kind of like the delivery here may have been a little wooden, but I think it kind of plays into the character to a certain degree, where this guy just isn't. He's just not confident, and you know, this kind of performance either channels that or was deliberate. But I have to say, I actually quite like the character, and the fact that I thought it was an intriguing performance, even though it's certainly maybe not a character you can necessarily root behind, and you will question some of the kind of decisions that are made here. I still found it very watchable. However, let's talk about maybe what doesn't work in this movie. The big one for me, I think, here is the narrative flow of this film. This movie deliberately tries to mess with your expectations on multiple levels. And the movie does succeed in doing that, and it will kind of, and you know, from the start to the end, you'll go in various different things about what you think is going on. But I've got to be honest, I think the movie overplays its hand a little bit and actually makes you genuinely confused about what's going on. And by the end of this film, I feel the majority of people still won't really know what has gone on with this film. If that was by choice, that was kind of a brave move. But I've got to be honest with you, I think as a viewer, people would be unsatisfied with that kind of like direction that it went in, where you don't really know what you're looking at. Is this kind of genuine kind of paranormal occurrences, or is this going on in his head, or is it something else completely different? Obviously, I'm not going to tell you in this kind of review, but nonetheless, I think the movie is deliberately kind of messing with the audience to a certain degree, and I don't know if that was a smart move to the degree that it does it, because this is going to go one where it's not just one twist, it's backwards and forwards and things like this, and it'll give you a great many options about maybe what is going on. But I feel, as I say, maybe kind of overdoes it a little bit. As I've mentioned, I think the acting here is kind of questionable in some aspects. I still was intrigued by it, but I do understand some of the critiques that may come from some of the acting. But I gotta say, I think some of it was more of a conscious choice. I will say, outside of the story kind of plot thread being what it is, there are still sort of, when you look in further into that, there are decisions made from whatever the outcome that don't make sense in regards to why hasn't, things happened, why haven't certain people removed themselves from a situation or seek help from a particular kind of source of help that may be available, or have more help, and things like this. The movie's so concerned with kind of trying to mess with your expectations. When you kind of come down to it, you're thinking, this is almost like a play. And it doesn't really seem to be that believable in certain aspects where you think, I know that the movie's trying to leave itself open for interpretation, but there's just some questions here about, as I say, certain things that may or may not could have happened, that we're just thinking, well, that just doesn't seem like that would be likely to happen, or that would have been likely to happen. Again, apologies for trying to be as vague as I can with this one. But nonetheless, I found it when I was watching this, I was thinking, well, why doesn't he just move out of this house? And there's a line here, he goes, oh, I even though all this stuff is happening, I kind of feel safe here. And it's like, that was a cheap line. That's not good enough, That is not a good enough reason to have this character still stay in this house when, what we've witnessed to that point is so overt, if that makes sense. It just, to me, this movie is it like to think it's a kind of psychological twisty turn, but I think it maybe cheats in the fact that it doesn't, characters don't act in a realistic manner, so it can have these twists and turns, which kind of defeats the purpose of trying to be a clever horror film when people don't act in a kind of realistic kind of manner, if that makes sense. In a way, this movie is less the sum of its parts, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like, there are some sequences here that I feel work well, but as a movie, as a whole, I don't think it's particularly all that well put together, and I just think it can be a little bit unsatisfying. But there's enough here, there's enough horror imagery and stuff going on that I feel may well still be of interest to those of you who kind of like the possession movie. And if you like twists and turns, this is enough here to make Christopher Nolan jealous, let me tell you. But I don't think it's just not done to anywhere near as cleverly as those Nolan films, for example. And this is where the movie really falls down. It was trying to be a bit too clever for its own good and ends up being a little bit of a mess. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.